going to present our NSF project, and basically we use maker activities and formative assessment to enhance computational thinking skills, physics and engineering learning. And so far it's our year 3, and we are wrapping up the project. And so what I'm presenting today mostly the work we have done in the past 3 years. And we have a website. You can, if you're interested, you can go and see more information. And today, I and Suresh and I will present our work, and it's a teamwork at the end. I will have other team members listed. Okay, so here's the introduction. We first have an introduction, and I'll talk about the computational thinking and the procedures we took for our project, and the activities we developed, and formative assessment we used, and data collection findings, and finally the future directions. And here's the introduction. And how many of you are familiar with computational thinking? Or maybe you are working on that. Okay, then quite a lot. And so not surprisingly, you are learning sciences, so it's a kind of one of the hot topics in these years. And so the computational thinking was first introduced in 1996, and it was promoted by YueYin in 2006, and later, more and more researchers to emphasize the importance of computational thinking, and it becomes such an indispensable component of STEM discipline, and it's almost impossible to do research, also practical problems in any scientific engineering discipline without the ability to think computationally. So the computational thinking is important because one, itself is an important skill to learn. Second, actually can also promote other learning, including STEM and outside STEM as well, in fact. In the recent NGSS, it's listed as one of the 8 basic scientific practice, the 8 core scientific practice. And here it is, which you might be familiar with as well. And so the definition of computational thinking has many variations, and in our project we use the following definition. And it's we consider it's thought processes involved in formulating problems and their solutions, so that the solutions are represented in a form that can be effectively carried out by information processing agent. So then another important kind of component of our project is makerspace. And how many of you are familiar with makerspace? Okay, great. So makerspace, and actually is a place where students can be engaged in various activities, from sewing, 3D printing, laser cutting to game design. It's very diverse, and many times it's hosted in some informal educational settings, for example, public library or some after-school program as well. And so the makerspace provides an ideal environment in which a 3-stage progression of use, modify, create is employed to engage youngs in scaffolding and to promote the development of CT. And so in this process, students first use others' creation, then they gain confidence to modify the products for their own needs of process, and finally develop ideas for new computational projects of their choosing. If it's well designed, the makerspace activities have the potential to improve students' CT skills and STEM learning. And so here's a picture of the Maker Lab at Washington Library in downtown. And so you can see they have like laser printers on the side, and the working tables, the bigger ones, the smaller ones, and on the other side they have the projector to give people workshops. And so in our study, and so the target we want to achieve is, because even though and computational thinking has been believed to be critical learning objectives itself and the critical factors to facilitate other STEM learning, researchers are still exploring effective ways to improve and assess computational thinking. So our goal is to develop and activities to enhance computational thinking. At the same time, we want to assess computational thinking. So that's our goal. And another thing is that we want to do those things in both informal and the formal educational settings. So in the informal one can include, for example, the library. The formal one will be the classrooms. And here are the major components. And the computational thinking and the physics learning are the learning objectives we want to achieve. And we use both maker space activities and the formative assessment to achieve these goals. And okay, now let's take a closer look at computational thinking that that are involved in our project. As I mentioned earlier, the definition for it is very diverse. People so far don't have an agreement, consensus on what exactly that is. And for our project, we finally decide, okay, less is more. We don't want to kind of spread ours too thin to cover too many things without finally, students or teachers will get confused. So after surveying different literature, and we decided to focus on the 4 major things. First is abstraction, second algorithm, and third decomposition, and finally pattern recognition. Because we feel those 4 components are very closely related to the physics learning and the engineering learning that we use. So we finally, after many iterations, we decided to focus on the 4 only, even though we started with a bigger list. Okay, let's go over each of them. Abstraction. So the definition for it is reduce complexity to main ideas through models or simulation and general applications. And here I use some examples from different disciplines, including the STEM ones and the non-STEM ones. For example, the general application is a non-STEM one, so you can create it. Then for our project, and because again we want to focus on physics, and so we kind of make it more specific in physics. For example, we consider drawing an electric diagram for existing circuits as a way to do abstraction, and to identify energy conservation principle to solve problem as a way to use abstraction. And surely, you can have many other examples. And this is abstraction too. So this is the map for the subway. And here's abstraction in physics. And algorithm, the next one is algorithm. And we consider this as organizing resources to work out a possible solution through the most efficient and effective steps. And first, again, here is an example for general application. For example, to discuss the decision-making process for choosing a college. And then create an algorithm that describes the process. There are many factors to determine maybe you need to make decisions for many sub-questions. And then you can reach a final conclusion. And in physics, and for example, we describe the procedure used to make a simple motor. And again, we kind of use this in the context of our maker activities. In one of the activities, we ask the student to make a simple motor and build circuits or make an Arduino application. Then later we will talk about Arduino. Okay. So here is an example from life, everyday life, how to make a toast. Actually, even though we didn't realize this is we don't consider, probably in life, we don't consider this is an algorithm, but in fact, it's a simple one. And in fact, when I went to some conferences and they talk about the algorithm for toddlers, for them to get ready for bed, then the steps you need to take, and brush your teeth, dress for bed, and then read a story, or those things are the algorithm. If they can, know exactly those procedures, actually, that's pretty good for that age group. And surely for those who do computer science and their algorithm is more sophisticated. And but what we have been emphasizing in our project to our students is we use computational thinking all the time, but many times we use it unconsciously. And what we want to do is to make people more consciously about this thinking process, which can make your everyday life or your learning and many other things more efficient, effective. And so that's kind of the goal. We always tell them, okay, see, you use it all the time, and you look for patterns and use algorithm and so on. Okay, so bake a cookie, that's algorithm. So the steps by steps, and you need to check, the color, or sometimes many things that you make decisions in those process. And algorithm, this is a flowchart. That's also, we consider that as algorithm as well. And so this is a particular one we write for the making a simple motor, I think, yes. And again, there are kind of decisions that they need to make during those process to check different points, and so all these actually steps. And we one activity we ask students to do is they write algorithm for the other group to repeat to replicate the project they did. So so during those process, they make sure you can make it a clear communication with others. In fact, when you write a computer code, you are doing the same thing with computer, right? You need to make sure there's no ambiguity, it's clear, and so that's the thing we use here. And decomposition, that's also a common problem-solving strategies, and it means break down the task into smaller parts that can be solved by each specific physics concept. Here's a general application. Develop a plan to make the school green, and separate strategies such as recycling paper cans, and in physics. And for any problem, and you can, especially those complicated problems, we can break it into simpler ones. For example, when working on a simple motor, break down the task to the coil making, the circuit setup, magnetic field setup, or when working with the Arduino, break down the task into building the circuits, which is hardware, and writing code, which is the software. When solving a projectile motion problem, I think I have that picture later, and we break it down the bigger, look at the kind of complicated phenomena into a smaller solvable problem. Okay. Here is a live example. To make a breakfast, and it's with a drink and something to eat. And we break that into, the bread part and the drinking part. And for each part, you follow an algorithm. So we do that all the time in life and in the academic learning. For example, in this one, we have a ball dropped from the top of the rack and go all the way to the can. So to analyze, to solve the problem, like how far that ball can fall, or where you should put the can to catch the ball. This is a sophisticated problem for kids, probably. But if we break that into smaller pieces, and for example, from A to B, it's energy conservation. From B to C, it involves projectile motion. The projectile motion then can be further broken down into a free fall motion and horizontal motion. So once we break it down into smaller pieces, the problems are solvable, rather than who knows. Okay, so you see for the last part, we can further break that into horizontal move and a vertical move. Okay, and all the problems can be solved. And the next one is the pattern recognition, and which is to make sense of the data, finding patterns and drawing conclusions. And here it's a general application procedure evaluate charts from data generated by a digital probe and describe trend, pattern, variation, and all layer represented chart. We do that all the time probably from elementary school. And based on your observation about how traffic change with the daytime and the time, generalize a rule to describe it. You can talk about the traffic change during a day. Actually, once you can recognize the pattern, you can use the pattern. For example, you can decide when you need to leave home to avoid the traffic or things like that, right? So we use those skills all the time, and we recognize the pattern and use the pattern to guide our behavior. And in physics, for example, examining how current and voltage are related, examining how voltage is distributed in different circuits, and so on. And here is an example from grade 102. So it's they ask students if you can read it. So for kids in the first or second grade, I would say probably many of them will solve this problem by drawing out the rest of the towel to figure out how many packs you need. However, if you recognize the pattern, so every one more towel you hung up, you need one more pack, right? So then the problem is easy. You don't need to draw. Otherwise, what if you have 100 towel? Do you need to draw the 100? So that's the importance of the pattern recognition. Once we know the pattern, that can help us solve problems and effectively and efficiently. So this is the pattern recognition in physics, the relationship between current and voltage. And this is a pattern actually I used in my stats course. And students need to recognize the relationship between two variables, and then you set up the right model to describe the pattern. And and here list of, I need to check my time on that. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, good. So I don't want to go on now. Frankly, I have been teaching online. For the online teaching, I have like unlimited time. I can talk as long as I want. So, because the students have a week to study the materials. But I haven't taught face-to-face for like 3 years or something also. So it's my first time to come back to this. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, so here's a list. I probably will move a little bit faster because really, I have 100 slides. I'll leave this here, and you can look it, because actually this is from the literature. So I'd rather give you more time to see what we have done, which is not on the literature yet. So okay. So besides those computational skills, and especially the four I talked about, and the other important part of the computational thinking is the computational dispositions. So those attitude, which is also super important, and including confidence in dealing with complexity, persistence in working with difficult problems, tolerance for ambiguity, and ability to deal with open-ended problems, the ability to communicate and work with others to achieve a common goal of solution. By the way, they are from NSTA, and they're resources for teachers. And so for our project, we also want to see whether students can improve those skills, then that means we need to measure them. And so we develop, unfortunately in this field so far we haven't seen the existing skills to measure them, so we create our own, and later I'll show you that. And procedures. For this one, I probably also will skip some details, and I will only give you the overall sequence we took. And so basically, in the past 3 years, we kind of follow this circle. We develop and refine activities and assessment strategies. Then we provide professional training for mentors and teachers. And for mentors, especially, we refer to those informal educators. For example, the staff who work in the public library. And so they constantly work with the students who, for example, come to Makerspace or YueMedia and to use the maker equipments. So they help those students. So we provide some training to them as well. And also we work with high school physics teachers. And after we train, give professional training to those educators, and we implement those activities among students. And so far we have done 2 summer academy in year 1 and year 2. And both were held in public library, the Washington one. And however, the first time when we did it, we asked informal educators to kind of lead the activity. The second time we asked formal classroom teachers to do the same thing. And yeah, they had quite different styles. For example, the informal educators hate notebooks. So I created some formative assessment, which is only 1 piece of paper. Oh, they feel that's really kind of, they themselves couldn't accept it. They feel that's too much writing, and so this is for fun. All the maker things is for fun. However, the formal classroom teachers will emphasize, write things down on your notebook. And so it's very interesting. And they have totally different strategies. And so far we haven't, frankly, I've been too busy to kind of to do the comparison of the 2 groups, but we have the data there. We only analyze a part of the data. We have the year 1, year 2, but because there's some atom difference on the pre-post test, so we need to sort out them to compare them. But anyway, there are interesting patterns to report later on. And so that's the thing. So in the following couple of slides, it's just more elaborations about those activities. And I will just skip them if you are interested, and I can send the slides to Mike so he can forward it to you. And so I would like to introduce the activities that we created, because really that's kind of one of the major components of our study, and we love those activities, and students love them, and teachers love them too. And so here, and for this particular one, and well, by the way, this is the final version we have for the second year academy, because after the first year when some students come, and they told us they love the activities, but they feel the time is too short, and so they wanted more time. So as we couldn't do it for longer time, and we cut the activities to fewer activities. So also we feel they are more coherent than the first round. And so those activities include electric circuits, e-Excel, Mickey, breadboard circuits, and Arduino. The logic here is oh, by the way, for the computational thinking, there are kind of different understanding about it. People, some people feel, computer need to be involved in these computational thinking skills. Others don't think so. So for us, we feel, it can be on a continuum. From without a computer, like the kids brush their teeth and dress for bed, and those, loosely speaking, broadly speaking, that we are okay to consider that as a computational thinking at that age level. And for those activities, we also feel, computer doesn't need to be involved. And so because we want to address both the physical learning and the engineering learning, so we design the activities in a way that more and more computers will be involved. So, and from pure physics to more engineering. And so the first one is electricity. Then we so that well, let's go. And so for the very first one, and we have the very basic traditional, the light bulbs, switches, and the battery thing, and also the wires, a bunch of wires for the students to connect them from the simple circuits to series to parallels. Then finally use their their understanding about those basics to create their project. For example, this group of students create a Santa chair. So when Santa sits on the chair, the lights will be turned on and music will start to play and things like that. Another student create a dollhouse in which she kind of has a light for individual rooms and fans. It's a very nice project. So using the basic circuits, because it's a maker, students are encouraged to bring their own interests, their own materials to the to the class and to make their own stuff. So that's something relevant to them. And so that's a different one from the first project. And then the second one is called e-textile, and in which we give so students can sew the electricity onto their clothes, hats, gloves here. For example, with the gloves, they can make like a OK glove. Once they do this, the lights will be turned on. Oh, I love you glove, the other one, and the first one. And so what they do is, here the kind of the tiny LED light, which is kind of not quite visible if you sew it well, and the battery holder and this battery, button battery, and some thread, the needle threader, and so they sew this to their own clothes. And this student just want to put on her head, and so it's kind of hard to see. And this student actually make one using her sew the light on her glove when she treats maze on the board, and the light will turn on. And because she set up the connection once she touched the aluminum. And so we encourage, because of computation thinking, we encourage students to draw the diagram for the products they make. And for example, this is one piece is a dog collar. So our student actually made something similar, not so nice looking, but they made something similar, and we encourage them to draw the design before they even start to make it, and after they make it, they draw the design again to see whether they want to modify anything. And so we also encourage them to see the importance of abstraction, so make the design easier, and so on. And the next one we use is Mickey, and now computer start to get involved. How many of you have used Mickey? Okay, none of it? Okay, so actually that will be something interesting to demo. Okay, so this is Mickey. It's created by a graduate student from MIT. And I would say for younger student, probably this is, okay, on this board, and it has the earth. May I have 5 people volunteer? Yeah. Actually, if you hold hands with others and some other people, let's say I high five with Jim. We can have the whole room hold up together, and it still works, because this thing only need a tiny current to be triggered.
Does it play both of us?
But the magic's on me. So if you hold this one, wherever you touch,
so
wherever you
hands
touch.
with Anna. So now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's both of you.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I won't work now.
Lovely of sound options. Mine wouldn't work. I'm just holding
Oh.
Actually, our students make one for something similar controller and game controller. Say, oh, I can save like $20 by making my own controller. But this thing costs 50.
Yes, but mom and dad will buy that because it's an educational.
Show this to my grandkids.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Eric. We're graduate students at MIT Media Lab.
We have a dream that everyone is an inventor. So we created Makey Makey to let you invent just by alligator clip. Alligator clips stuff like bananas to your Makey Makey. When you touch the banana, your computer just thinks you're touching the keyboard. The front has arrow keys, spacebar, and mouse left click. When you're ready for more, flip the Makey Makey over and you've got more keyboard keys and support for the mouse. You can even use the board like an Arduino when you are ready. No programming, no breadboarding. You don't even have to install software. Just plug it in USB.
Order your Makey Makey today and start changing how the world works.
Yeah, that's even though they talk about no breadboard, no Arduino, we do have them in the following. So that's our next thing actually. So yeah, but Makey does give student opportunities to be creative. And then one student who loves painting and installed the Makey to her painting, and then when she touches the flower, for example, the certain sound will ring, and then butterfly and certain sounds kind of make it interesting. And this student is taking a driving class, and he made a steering wheel, and by using the Makey, and because I think there's a driving programs. Basically, whatever need to be triggered by those arrow keys, space or click, and you can convert that thing out. If only you have a conductive material, then you are fine. For example, you can do like a jumping pad, a dancing pad or something. One student did that, and they just wrap up aluminum on their feet, and they can jump on the pad, just something like a Wii U. And so they had a lot of fun. And sometimes, we couldn't even imagine the ideas they have in their mind. And however, back to the CT thing, and we encourage students to recognize actually they are still circuits. They are just a bunch of parallel circuits. Whenever you touch something, you close a loop, and you trigger the computer to do certain things. And so the next thing, more and more computer involved, and we introduced the breadboard. And because of, for sophisticated, complicated circuits, by using those wires won't be enough. And for example, the master board in the computer, right? There's so many, so we need something more efficient. Breadboard can be one thing to learn, and we kind of introduce this to students, and they can build projects on breadboard, and also use abstraction to draw the circuits. And it's actually not quite easy for them to learn breadboard, so we use some embodied learning, and we ask them to play as different components. I'm a switch, or I'm a LED, or I'm a power, and they put their hands onto different stickers, pretending they are the different components of the circuits, and so which is pretty helpful for them. And finally, after they are ready, so this breadboard is just a very condensed circuits, and the next thing we introduce to them is the Arduino.
So Arduino is essentially a small computer. Here is the picture of Arduino. We also have it right here. It might look scary, but I think that's what they wanted to do, but it's actually very easy to use. The whole purpose of Arduino is for people to use it to control systems. It has very easy to use hardware and software, and the creators of Arduino wanted to make learning both programming and physics more fun and intuitive. So how does an Arduino work? Essentially, Arduino is a computer that can be used to control different systems. So whenever we use Arduino, there is the hardware component, the system component, and there is the programming component. So it's always connected to some system that is supposed to control that system. And then in order to control that system, someone needs to write a code for Arduino to control it. But once we actually program Arduino, we can disconnect it from the computer. It will be able to control it after that. So there is both the hardware components, which is the physics, and the software code, which has to do with programming. And just to clarify, it's not just a very simple computer. It can actually do a lot of things. Yes, we can use it to control just a light, but there are also more interesting projects that people have been doing with Arduino. So here are two robots with Arduino. You can see the boards here. So this one is able to grab stuff. The other one is able to follow a certain line wherever it goes. Essentially, Arduino is a regular microcontroller. And microcontrollers are very powerful. We see them in our cars, for example, the cruise control of the car, or when we have a microwave and then we set the time and whatever. So there's always a microcontroller controlling all of that. Could be even more complicated, like the autopilot of an airplane. So Arduino is the real thing. So it's not just something, like a toy. Now, the activities we built for Arduino, we built 4 activities from simple to complex, and all the systems that we work with are the systems with lights, so we control lights in different ways. Also, Arduino is the most programming that the kids did, but we also didn't want it to be very intensive on programming. So we only taught them 3 simple instructions in Arduino, and then we built the activities in such a way that they don't need any more instructions. They just need their CTS skills to build those activities. So the very first one is right here. So this is a very standard Arduino activity. It's blinking an LED, a light. So these are the 3 simple instructions. One instruction can turn on the light, one instruction turns off at the light, and then there's one instruction that will wait for a certain amount of time before executing the next instruction. So with this 3 instructions, and right here down there is the actual code that they wrote. Essentially, it's going to blink an LED, right? So we also asked them to play with the number, because the standard one is 1 second, which is 1000 milliseconds. We asked them to make the light longer, to be in the on status, and then to be off for like shorter time. So they played with this one. And then after that, we have the 3 other activities that we built. So the second activity was essentially a software expansion of the first one. The third one is the hardware extension of the first one. And then the final one is actually a big system. So we wanted to build on those activities simple, step by step, so that they can make a complex system. So in the table down here, we have the complexity of the system in hardware with respect to hardware and software. The first one, we asked them to do the blinking LED. It was 1 LED, 1 resistor, and then it was a simple software. The second one we will talk about is SOS signal. The hardware is the same. Software became more complicated. The third one, we are having 2 blinking LEDs. The hardware becomes much more complicated. And then the last one is a traffic light system. And again, all of them are designed in such a way that they only use those 3 instructions: turning on an LED, turning it off, and then waiting for some time. So this is activity number 2, which is creating the SOS lights. So if you look at the hardware, it's essentially the same as the previous one, but here it has a more, software. But essentially, it's just all the 3 instructions that we talked about. The SOS signals is used for requesting help. So we have 3 short signals, and then we have 3 long ones, and then we have 3 short signals again. So we asked them to design this, and they only needed those 3 instructions. But they needed to see the pattern. They needed to see what they need to do, how to break it down, how to put those 3 instructions in such a way that they can do this. All the CTS skills that we wanted. The third activity, we asked them to do 2 blinking lights. The software is not that complicated, but we wanted them to be able to work with the hardware, be able to control multiple lights at the same time. So the hardware is actually a little bit larger. And then the last one, we actually asked them to build the traffic light system, which was the biggest project that they did. Essentially, it's for an intersection. So we have east, west bound and north, southbound. So 2 sets of lights. And we asked them to build this, right? Again, if you look at this, only for this one, I'm showing the hardware components, software components. To build this big system, they needed to break it down into the hardware part, the software part, and then for the hardware part, this is the abstraction, this is how they need to build this thing. And then for the software part, they also need to do the abstraction. They also need to do the pattern recognition. So what happens in a traffic light system? So when one side is green, the other one should be red, and then it should wait for a certain amount of time. Then it needs to go to yellow, red, and then the whole thing's to off. So all these patterns and putting them together next to each other. So that was the whole purpose of this activity, so that they can practice abstraction, decomposition, pattern recognition, algorithm design. So once you design this thing, then they actually built the whole thing. So as you can see, the code is actually very big, but again, it's just those 3 simple instructions. It's the way to put them together so that you can accomplish a big project. And this is also the hardware. We also have the Arduino here. So this is the Arduino, and this is the breadboard that people usually use to work with Arduino. And this is actually the traffic light system that is already programmed. So I'm just going to connect it to the computer here. So as you can see, so there is this one now is red, the other side is green. I don't know if it's visible, so it's going to be like that for a while. Then this one from green is going to go to yellow, and then this one is going to go to red. So these are all different steps they have to implement in their code. So the green one is now on here. It's not that bright, but you can see that all we wanted to show them was that they don't need to know a lot of programming. They can actually use very simple programming but design complex systems. So this is the Arduino project that we did. They also use Arduino for some of their final project, I guess. Maybe you'll talk about that. But yeah, that's the Arduino part that I wanted to talk. I think yes.
The programming, is that written out on the computer connected to the Arduino?
Yes. And the good thing about it is that the programming language, most of programming languages are very far away from the way we talk. But Arduino has a very simple programming language. When you want to make a light to be on, you just say right, on, or whatever. It's very similar to what we use, so it's easy for people who are not familiar with this stuff to program.
So you need the computer attached to the Arduino?
You need the computer attached to Arduino once to program it. Now this one, for example, has been programmed. After that, I only use computer for power now, so you can actually connect it to any sort of power. So as you can see in the robot examples that I had there, there's always a battery connected to this. After that, you just need power. So here I'm not programming it. It's already programmed, so I just needed the power.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's portable.
So what's the language that underlies
So Arduino has its own programming language. It's called Arduino, but for the computer to be able to execute those simple instructions, it's gonna be translated into ones and zeros. That's the only thing computers understand. It's gonna be the language of
straight to machine language.
it's gonna happen, yes, it's gonna be translated into machine language, but the Arduino compiler is gonna take care of that. So the people who program it don't need to know the details, what's going beyond that, but they can still control the system.
So you have to have the Arduino software on the computer
Yes.
to do the compiling so that it
Exactly, yes.
They all come with this set.
Yeah.
Once you have the.
So, yeah, that's the way it's working.
What are some other types of controls beyond the light?
So when I say this one turns on the light and turns off the light, it's not actually the light. What it does is that it connects the power and disconnects the power. So you can connect anything to this one, and just by controlling the power being on and off, you can control different systems. Like you can have a sensor, then that sensor could control, I don't know, whatever. So, or just think about, for example, a car, which is supposed to be on the cruise control. So Arduino, for example, if we have sensors detecting the speed that we currently are going with and the speed that we should be going with, then it could turn on something, which means we need more speed. If we are going more speed that we should do, it's gonna, disconnect the speed, and connect the the brake. So all of that is like this. So just by connecting power and disconnecting power, it's going to be very powerful, and this one does that. So
it's a set
that's
of simple switches.
There are simple switches. You could also connect sensors to this one.
Yeah.
So it can communicate with the outside world through sensors. It could be able to
As inputs.
yes, as inputs and as
variable
outputs.
voltages, so it could sense voltage levels or
It could.
have variable voltage
Yes.
outputs.
So sometimes you need actual, other devices to connect to Arduino. So like a sensor to be connected to Arduino, and then Arduino is able to detect the level of the sensor. So how, for example, bright the light is. There are things that Arduino can. So maybe if the light is very bright, I want to dim the lights in my room. Things like that. You can always do that with Arduino. So it's quite powerful. There are a lot of things that people can do with Arduino. And there are a lot of cool projects available online that people have used Arduino to implement. But yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Yeah, we one of our students made a little cinema. The cinema, what they call the box.
Oh,
They can put their cell phone on top of the box when they lie down and to watch a movie, and when they don't want to watch a movie, and they have Arduino program the Starry Night as the soothing the environment for them to fall asleep or something. That's one Arduino application they used, and so yeah, it has a lot of potentials, and Suraj has been very helpful for us to develop. Yeah, he developed basically those activities for the project. Okay, and the next one, formative assessment. And so so far we talk about those activities.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they are just regular activities, students busy with this and that, and maybe they pick up some CT, but we feel that won't be enough. So we need to kind of scaffold them to realize how the CT plays a role in this process. And that's why we use formative assessment and to kind of reinforce the CT learning. And so you guys must know the difference between summative assessment and the formative assessment. And the formative assessment is very important for learning, and during the learning, and improve learning, and it's for learning. And so formative assessment also has a lot of variations from informal and planned to formal planned. And the informal one can happen during the instruction all the time. For example, the conversations between teacher and the students or among students, and can all be formative assessment opportunities if teachers make a good use of it. Or the formal end will be, for example, the working sheet. you covered something as a teacher, you covered something, you want to check whether student got it or not, the learning gap, figure out the learning gap to help them further to close the gap, then you can have some formative assessment. Or in the middle, you can have some planned for interaction assessment. Before you even teach a class, you think about the questions you plan to ask during the instruction, and that can be planned formative assessment. And so the research shows actually the informal ones is very powerful, and sometimes can be even more powerful than the formal ones. And if there's a good instructional conversation between students and teacher and students, and the student can learn well. And then that's why in our project we try to build in those informal formative assessment. Actually, from other to some degree, it probably should belong to the middle, the planned formative assessment. So we kind of developed some questions that the teachers can ask for each of the activity, and which can emphasize the different CT components. And for example, like can you draw for the abstraction, the teacher can encourage the student to draw the electric diagram for their design, or remind the student to think about whether a design is series or parallel for algorithm, and ask the students to write down the steps that they took to build certain things, like circuits, and so others can replicate what they did and do something similar. Decomposition, encourage the students to break down the task to smaller pieces, for example, how each branch of circuits work, and if the whole circuit do not work, how to make sure each part works. And also for the Arduino, you can see there's a software component and a hardware component, try to break the bigger problems into smaller ones and to conquer each. The pattern recognition, and ask the student to figure out what's needed for successful circuits, and so on. In fact, this is just some examples, and we have a giant matrix you can imagine for each of the activities, and we have the questions for each of the dimensions. And okay, the formal ones, and we do give students a working sheet, even though in the first year they are pretty much ignored by the informal teachers. They hate it. And in the second year, and I think some teachers, the teachers used some of them, and we haven't analyzed those notebook data yet. But basically on those working sheet, we ask them to describe. See, for example, this one. Again, we ask the students to describe the function and draw the diagram and list the steps, so you can see the abstraction and algorithm. Those things kind of play a role there. And similarly for the e-Excel, and for every single activities, again, we have those formative assessment. And data collection, and we collected a lot of data during this process because many participants got involved. We have those developing team, we have those professional development for informal educators and formal educators, and many stages of the data we collect different kind of of the study we collect different data. And for the summer academy here, I listed the major data we collected from the summer academy, the demographic data, pre-post test, and for both the achievement test and the attitude test, we also collect a notebook assessment. And for the qualitative, we have observation notes and audio taping, video taping, student interview, teacher interview. A lot of data waiting for us to analyze, and we only did a part of them. And for the achievement test, we have paper and pencil one. Also, we have performance one, which is an Arduino project, and which is very similar to the traffic one Saraj just described. And we also used some external items to see whether students improve their CT on those items. Okay, and so here's an example for the achievement test. this one we ask students to draw the diagram for these circuits on the breadboard, and so it's an abstraction skill, and we also ask the student to design and relate to the e-Excel. So those are close assessment. You can see they are kind of related to the activities we just ask the students to do. And this is the e-Excel one, and then we ask them to design as a fashion designer to decorate a hat by sewing 5 LED lights on it, and ask them to draw and list the steps they took. And the Arduino one, yeah, this is a traffic light system. This one, so this is a multiple step assessment. So every time we only hand out 1 page of the questions. In the first one, we ask them to list the major steps they are going to take to build the traffic system. And the reason we do this is many of the students actually didn't finish the traffic light project during the sort of learning process. So we figured, okay, it would be a nice thing to test on the post-test, given what they have learned. So we convert that activity into assessment, and so during this assessment, so basically they need to use different CT skills and their knowledge and about the Arduino to solve the problem. So this is so the first one, we ask them to draw the diagram. And on the first page, after they are done, we collect the paper. Then we hand out them the next page. We give them the diagram and ask them to build it on the breadboard. So basically, the second one, we separate the different focus. So for this one, even if they don't know how to draw the diagram, and if they can recognize, kind of convert this diagram to something on the breadboard, that's satisfied the second learning goal. And then the next one is we ask them to recognize the pattern in the traffic light in the intersection, to check how they light up, the different lights light up, and so ask them to feel that's pattern recognition. The next one is we give them this pattern and ask them to write a program to algorithm to make it happen. So during this whole process, different CT is involved. Also, students need to have both the hardware and the software knowledge and skills to do it. And something interesting about this is we found, because in the project we encourage teamwork, and the Arduino assessment shows that the one drawback of this teamwork is many of the students can only do half of it. If they are in charge of the hardware, they're very good at it. They got 100%, but they have almost no knowledge about the software. And so the worst was that some students might only know the software, but they said, oh, I didn't do the hardware. So which reminds us in the future, surely that's how people do in reality. People take different roles and when they cooperate. But to make sure they do know everything, we are thinking in the future we need to ask them to switch their role during this learning process. So that way they know every component of the project. Okay. And so we also have the B-brass external atoms to measure CT. And it's called a B-brass challenge atoms. It's introduced in 2004 I have trouble pronouncing the name. And so it's widely used internationally, but I think mostly in European countries, not that much in the US. And those atoms is intended to promote CT learning of K-12 students, and it's programming free and not STEM specific. So basically there's no content knowledge involved, and mostly is focused on CT skills. And so we picked also those atoms based on daily life scenarios. So they don't need the STEM content to solve those problems. And so they have good alignment with the the focus we have in our project. Mostly the first 4 that we are interested in. We also have a lot of evaluation ones. And so then here are some sample sample tests. I'll just go quick. And so as I said earlier, we have attitude surveys to measure different perspectives related to physics and engineering learning, and also computational thinking dispositions and the frequency of using reported frequency of using different CT skills. And here are those questions we used. Unfortunately, because we really give students too many tests, we couldn't make this survey too long. So for many of those constructs, we only have about 3 items for each. And but so far, based on some preliminary analysis, they actually fit very well. We run some CFA and they perform well. And yeah, we also collect more data from high school besides those summer academic kids. And this is the frequency of using computational thinking skills. And here are the preliminary results. And for year 1. And overall, students make an improvement on both the achievement test from pre to post. And on the achievement ones, also on most of the attitude ones, except for there's several exceptions. So self-efficacy in physics and engineering didn't improve significantly. And this one, perceived value of this didn't. But the CT dispositions and the CT use both improved significantly. And the interest in physics and engineering also improved significantly from pre to post. And the second year 1, and we haven't run the analysis on the attitude survey, but we did the analysis on the achievement ones. We found that they had a significant improvement on almost all of the achievement tests except for the external ones. The B-BRAS one, we only had 6 B-BRAS items, and it turned out our students didn't make they improved, but not enough to be significant. So kind of they are less sensitive to the treatment we give students.
How large number of students are we looking at here?
We had 16, I think, the year in both years. Yeah, we have some kind of missing data, but mostly see this.
Okay.
Yeah, for year 1, 17 should be like the degrees of freedom is 16,
So
and
you
then
need a really
we have
big effect
17.
size.
Yeah, exactly. The sample size is the problem, and yeah, in summer, especially for high school students, it's very interesting. We found it's not easy to recruit them, and I pay for my kids' summer camp, but we pay those high school kids to come to do the project with us. And even though they enjoy it, but it's not easy to fund them because many of them, they have their summer job or some other obligations, and so yeah, most of the students are actually from the CPS and from low income families, and so our next plan actually is to probably run this in schools where we can have more students to use them, and it's really surprising. I feel it's such a good opportunity to learn. But we had trouble recruiting students.
And if I remember, you said that this was the summer program, but it was done in the Washington Library makerspace.
We did it in the Washington Library, but not in their makerspace. Not in their maker. Their makerspace is kind of small.
Okay.
Yeah, and also we don't, for the project we don't need their laser printer stuff.
Okay.
So they put ours in the basement. There's a huge room, so we can use all the space for students and stuff. And so students in general are very positive about the activities, and they enjoyed it. And actually, in year 2, we got even though we had trouble recruiting students, we got a student from year 1 asking, "Can I come again?" So no, for our study purpose, you cannot do it twice. And so it's fun. They had a lot of fun. And future directions, and we will From the work we have done, we have a lot of conference presentations, and currently we are working on converting those work to journal publications. So as for future directions, one thing is we need to publish those work, hopefully in the coming year. And then besides that, we wish to introduce those activities and assessment strategies to formal education settings. And the one thing we are considering doing is probably we can try some middle school students. And we haven't make a final decision yet, but we found it's really hard to work with a high school student because they have too many other obligations. For school, we ask a couple of teachers to try them out in their classrooms, but they can only, let's say, do one activity because they said, I need to prepare my student for the AP exam, the state test, and something. It's just way too busy. Everybody's too busy to do this really fun stuff. Maybe middle school kids have more time to do this. So one thing we can try is with a middle school. And the second is we can develop more maker activities that enhance CT and the physics engineering learning. For example, one thing is to further explore the potential of Arduino. We always ask Suresh, work with us, so we need more of this Arduino, it's fun. And develop and validate objective assessment to measure CT. And we have some assessment and also the survey. Actually, we haven't fully validated them. We need more data to validate them. Also to examine the causal relationship between those activities and the student learning outcomes. Because as you can see, we only have a pre-post test, which is a very weak design. But that's the only thing we could have done so far, and we wish to do some experimental study. And other bigger questions, and we wonder, and we feel can be the future directions. Maybe there will be no consensus, but it would be nice to lay out, different perspectives clearly and systematically. And actually, one of my students is working on literature review on a CT assessment. So which we hope to, organize the literature we have so far. And the standard for CT and learning progression of CT, for different grade levels, age levels, what kind of CT skills we expect them to achieve, for the toddlers and more and more, and what exactly they should be able to do at that certain age. And more examples for how CT is used in different fields. And always people say, CT is critical for different fields, but we feel more concrete examples will be helpful to demonstrate how they are used. And also how to measure the CT, different perspectives, CT like cognitive, attitude, self-report, scenarios, think aloud, problem solving, open-ended, multiple choice question. Okay, many different types of tools we can use to measure CT, and we need to explore to better use those tools to measure CT, and how to assess CT in different fields, because the CT and other subjects can be integrated, and so for different fields, we can develop those assessments to measure how the CT is used in them, and then also to examine whether the CT can facilitate other STEM learning, even though people believe so, but we don't have empirical evidence to show it is true. Let's say if you improve student CT, can that further improve their CT as STEM learning? And so we don't know yet, even though people believe so. Okay, I used too much time.